Let's focus on the stroke a little bit in a new composition. Click OK, and I'm going to create an ellipse on the page, holding Shift down on the canvas. Stage, whatever we like to call it, and I'll just center that ellipse, and let's focus on the stroke. The fill I'm going to actually turn off. Click OK. Oops, need to make sure that's selected. Turn the fill off, like so. Okay, let's add a stroke and make sure that we've got a solid stroke and go OK. And we can see that we've got a 30 pixel yellow stroke there. Now, there's quite a lot of properties for stroke you can see here, and I'm sure you'll have fun playing with those. We can add a dash, and you could see the potential for animation there. If I keyframe that dash or the offset, we can have that moving around, have our dash moving around. I'll just take that off. We've got also some taper, which is kind of interesting. So we could have kind of more kind of brush stroke looking strokes. So I definitely encourage you to experiment with dashes, taper and wave. I'm going to play around with animating the stroke width. So I'm going to make sure my stroke is selected, and I'm going to create a keyframe for stroke width at 0. And what I'm going to try and do is create like a transition with this stroke. So like a kind of a wipe from one scene to another. And I'm going to do that by animating the stroke from 0 through to something much larger. You can see that as I move through, I can almost feel that, well, I can fill that whole frame with that stroke. You can see it growing like that, which is kind of cool. So I can transition using just the stroke from our background color through to yellow, which I find pretty good. Another thing that's also good and has a lot of potential is that we can have, like in Illustrator, we can have more than one stroke on a vector, which is kind of cool and a bit mind-boggling. Over here we've got this little add operator. I'm going to pull that down. We've got quite a lot of things that we can do here. We can add to a shape. And one of those things is indeed strokes. So we can add multiple strokes and fills and add another stroke. And so it should stack on there as stroke 2. Twirl that down. And you can see now currently the default is a white stroke at 2 pixels. You can see I can manipulate another stroke over the top there. So I can add a keyframe for that width and another keyframe for that width, and do the same thing. So we can have like kind of maybe a sequence of these strokes filling up the screen. We're going to stick with our current color palette of kind of primaries. Go OK. So transition from black to yellow to blue, and let's add another one. A third stroke, and maybe even a fourth. Oops, not a fill. Undo that. And add a stroke. Oops. Now we've got to make sure that we have the right element selected, so I want to add a stroke to this ellipse here, not another element of the layer, and twirl that down. I think red over the top of blue. And adding the keyframes, 1 and about halfway to 2. Excellent. So I've added 3 strokes there that allow us to transition using a stroke from one colour to another.